I don't have too much to say about him anyway.
So, it's December 19th, Delray Beach, Florida, Life and Time of Louise Klein version, episode 4. So how did you meet your husband? Your first husband? What's the background story there? What was his name?
His name was Lionel Judah Gordon. He was tall, very slim. He was about 6'4" and very thin, and very slight frame, with big shoulders. And he was an ex-Marine. And today they have they call it something, but in those days they called it shell shock.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right. And he was suffering from this.
How old was he? He was a Marine. He must have been older.
He was 5 years older than me.
How old were you when you met him?
I think about 18. And he was bossy and knew it all. He could have done anything. He was very bright, very fast, but he was not geared towards it. He came from a family where his mother was a nurse and his father was a clerk in the Brooklyn courts. He had a younger brother who was, his name was Elmer. I don't know where they got that from. His name was Elmer, and and he played the piano beautifully, and he wanted to go into show business. He may have been homosexual, but it was never discussed. When I met Lonnie, he told me his name was Lucky, and I didn't like the name Lucky. Lucky is, I don't know, it's not a Jewish name. So he says, all right, you can call me Lonnie. So I called him Lonnie. And we went out a couple of times, and unfortunately, I became pregnant. And so I didn't want to marry this man. So I held out for 4 months. I didn't want to marry him. And I thought of having an abortion, but I didn't know how to have an abortion and when. And so, not knowing, I waited until it was too late. I was in the 4th month, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor says they don't do abortions in the 4th month. And so, luckily, that's how I have Jackie. And so I went to him and I told him, so that we decided to get married. And my mother and father weren't too happy about it, but they went along with it. And we had a regular, big wedding, and we moved into we couldn't get an apartment in those days, so we rented a room in this Jewish Orthodox family's apartment. And we used their kitchen, and we had this one bedroom, which was right next to the bathroom. It was very convenient. And we lived in that apartment.
Where was the apartment?
On Harrison Avenue in the Bronx. I don't remember the address.
Why couldn't you get your own apartment? You didn't have the money?
No, in those days there were no apartments. There was nothing available. All the soldiers came home from the army, and many of them had been married previously. Many of them got married. There were no apartments available because in the 4 years of the war, nothing was built, because they were so busy with the war that there weren't apartment buildings built.
What year were you married? What year was this?
What year was I married?
Yes.
I think it was, I think it was 48, but I don't remember. And another thing I don't remember is the date we got married. I don't remember that either. It was something that I didn't have to remember, and I don't remember.
Was it a happy wedding day?
Yeah, we got money. We got $300 from the wedding, which was considered a lot of money at the time, and we put it in the. I put it in the bank, and we moved into this one-bedroom apartment, and from the very beginning it was horrible. He had this nature about him to go after me and not leave me alone, you know. If he decided he wanted to know something or he wanted to do something, he was pushing me and pushing me and pushing me, and I had to do what he wanted. And the only way I could stop him is if I would start to cry. But I'm not a crier. So it took me a long time before I could cry. So these tantrums went on for a long time before he let go, when he was sorry that I was crying. So this went on. This went on most of our married life. But from Harrison Avenue, he hooked up. He became a diaper delivery man. In those days, they delivered diapers to people's homes, and they picked up the dirty diapers and they took them to the laundry. They washed them, and then the following week they brought back clean diapers and took the dirty diapers. He made $45 a week, which was good, because I could go to the fruit market, and for $2.50 I could pick up enough fruits and vegetables that I couldn't carry it. It was so heavy. So the times were good for the $45 a week. And
You had left the Federal Reserve at this point?
what do you mean?
You were working, you said, at 18 at the...
No. When I got married, I quit. I quit working. Yeah, I didn't work at all. And I lived in this one-bedroom apartment, and...
You had a big belly for a while, right?
Yes. Oh, and... but then we moved. Yeah, no, first we lived there long enough to have the baby. We had the baby, and I brought her home to this apartment, and I put her in the drawer of the dresser because we didn't have a crib. And she was a good baby. She was a good girl. And so we lived...
What was her name?
Yes, that's the next thing. She was born, and he insisted on naming her Jamie. Now, Jamie today is more common, but at the time I had never even heard of Jamie. And here I'm going to name my baby Jamie. So she was named Jamie Ann. The Ann is for Lonnie's mother. She was still alive. Her name was Ann. And we named her Jamie Ann.
Did she get a Hebrew name also?
She may have, but I didn't know. You see, my father at that time was getting to the point where he was very sick. He had phlebitis, and he was in a lot of pain a lot of the time. But Lonnie got along with him. They liked each other. They liked each other so much that when I walked out on him, he ran to my father, you know, to say that my mother broke up the marriage. So we lived there for a while he worked for the diaper service, and he hooked up with somebody who was selling a carriage that converted into 3 different things. It made a stroller, a carriage, and maybe a crib. I don't know. I don't remember. It's a long time. And he hooked up with this guy, and this guy wanted him to go up into Hartford and create a sales crew to sell this thing, and that it hadn't been made yet, but they had pictures of it. So he wanted to get a sales crew to go door to door to sell these, and then on a date, on a specific date, they would release the carriages, and they would deliver them and get the full. So they gave a down payment, and then they paid for it full when it came. So he thought it was a good deal, and whatever he wanted to do, I was glad. So we went up into Hartford, Connecticut, and we rented a room with a woman in West Hartford. Her name was Mrs. Mullally. She was a very nice old lady, and she was glad to have us, and we lived there for a while until he again bumped into somebody who had an empty apartment. I don't know where he was meeting these people. Maybe he was the kind of man that went to bars, so he might have been going to bars. So he he met this man who broke up with his wife and had this apartment. So he said he'll rent it to him for what it costs him. He wanted to hold on to the apartment. It was a railroad flat, which meant that each room was connected to each other, and we had to heat it ourselves, and we had to heat the water ourselves and everything, and we lived there until the date of the so Lonnie got 3 or 4 different men who went out and sold these carriages. They got deposits, and then when the date came to deliver, the guy didn't deliver. So the whole thing fell apart. So then we went from Hartford, we moved to Patterson. I don't know why.
Well, that must have been very stressful when that business collapsed, because it was a scam.
Yeah, but we didn't know it, you know, and I don't really know if it was a scam. I don't know. I don't know. I was a kid. I had the baby, and I was doing my thing, and I was, I was living in one room, and I was struggling. We didn't have any money. That was for certain. In fact, I remember one time, I said to her, I was so proud of myself that I was managing. For breakfast, I gave him 4 strips of bacon, and I saved the bacon fat, and then for dinner, I made a pot of rice, and I used the fat from the bacon to flavor the rice, and that was what we ate. And I was so proud of this. We didn't have any money. So he may have decided to go to Patterson because he didn't have the money to pay the rent to this guy. I don't know. I don't really remember all this. In the meantime, while all this is going on, he's still badgering me. He's still making my life miserable. I had no money for clothes. I had no money for food, and I was just, getting there. In fact, I probably was using part of the $300 in the bank, but I don't remember. We moved from there to Patterson, New Jersey. I don't know why we went to Patterson. We lived there for a short time, and then from there we moved to Bruckner Boulevard in the Bronx. This was a rooming house where you rented a room, and on the floor there were various people in the bedrooms, and at the end of the hall there's a kitchen and a bathroom. And we lived there for a short time, and he wanted me to be the super. He said if I wash down the kitchens and the bathrooms, they'll give us free rent. Are you kidding? You're asking a Jewish girl to clean toilets? You know, I'd never do a thing like that. But in the meantime, while we were here, things really got rough. And he began to act up more violently than any time else. In fact, he tells Jackie that he purposely did it to get rid of me. And the one thing that sticks in my mind, there must have been other things that he did, but the one thing that sticks in my mind is I was in the kitchen with him talking. We were arguing, of course, we don't talk, we had nothing to talk about. We were in the kitchen and we were fighting, and I got very irate. I walked away from him and I went into our room and I closed the door. And the door had a glass on it, but it's the kind that has the wire in between. Mm-hmm. So it's not just glass, it's wire. I went in and closed the door. I may have slammed it, I don't know, I was angry. And he came and he took his fist and he put it right through this glass. And all the glass went in the baby's crib. And the baby's sleeping there. And this was, to me, was the end. I couldn't tolerate this at all. And within a short time, I took my baby. I said to him, we have a car and $100. Which one do you want? He says, well, I'll take the car. I said, I'll take the $100. And I walked out on him. And I went to my mother. My mother lived on College Avenue at the time. My father was in Mount Sinai Hospital. He had had some toes cut off. He had gangrene in his leg, and they cut off some toes, and he was in the hospital. Lonnie went to the hospital to say that my mother broke up the marriage. I went to my mother, and my mother wouldn't let me come and live with her. She said she's afraid of him, he'll kill her. And she was justified, she had a right. So she wouldn't let me live with her. Around the corner on Morris Avenue, there was one of these rooming houses, like the one that I had lived in, where you have a bedroom and then you have a kitchen and bathroom. On the third floor there was a room, and I rented this room. And I went out and I got a job the same day. I don't remember. It was a job that only lasted a day. It wasn't a good job. It lasted a day. And I came home from work. I went to my mother to pick up. My mother agreed to take care of the baby, but she wouldn't let me come and live with her. And so I went, so I came home, I got the baby in the carriage, and I slept through all of the 3 flights of steps. We went to sleep in the morning. I came down the 3 flights of steps and took her to my mother. And I went out and got a better job. And I think at that point I got a job in Austin Motors. I was a statistical typist. I had these long sheets, and as the car came in from England, based on the serial number, I would put it in this record, so that they knew where the car went and who had it. I worked for them, and after a while, my mother decided that I was suffering. It was very hard for me to go to work and live in that rooming house and take the baby in the carriage up the steps. So she let me come and live with her, which was a big relief, but it was also a big mistake. Because my mother undermined me with that baby. My mother became Jackie's mother.
At that point, she was still Jamie, right?
Yes. Yeah, my father was still alive. When we lived in the house with them, and my father came over from the hospital, he says, I don't want Jamie. And he started to call her Jackie. Because his father's name was Jacob. He decided that Jamie is going to be Jackie. And he held to it, Jackie, until we all agreed to it. Later on, I had her name legally changed to Jacqueline.
Oh, I thought she had done that years later. I thought she had done that on her own many years later.
No, I did it.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah. But what was going on now was I had a decent job. I was working. I was going to work, coming home to my daughter. And my mother became her, she took over. If I said black, my mother said white, and it was going to be white, and that was it. I can't tell you how she undermined me. One time we were up in the country, and she's a little baby, she must have been 2 years old, and we lived on this hill, and she went out in the road. And I went out and I grabbed her, and I turned her over, and she was still wearing a diaper, and I spanked her, and I said, never go out on the road, and don't do this. You have to know you can get killed, blah, blah, blah. And out come my mother with a bottle. She says, here, baby, here, come here, darling, come here, over here. Take the bottle, take the bottle. She undermined me at everything. In fact, till the day she died, she always took Jackie's part and never mine. And I always resented it, and I fought for Jackie because she was my life for almost 15 years. She and I belonged together, and anyway, at one point my father died, and I was still living in the home, in the house with my mother, and my brother was in the Air Force. And he had to send my mother money as a dependent. So he was helping her. And I was going to work, and I helped her too. So we lived like that for a while. And then I changed jobs. The job that I had at Austin wasn't anything fulfilling. And I changed jobs. I got this job with a dish company. They sold dishes to the movies. And I was, it looked like a decent job. There were 2 Jewish men there. And they used to come in the morning and tell me what to do. And they would go across the street and play pinochle until 12 o'clock. And they would come back and let me go to lunch for an hour. And then after that, they would go back and play pinochle. And at 4 o'clock, they would come back, sign the letters, and go home and leave me there till 5 o'clock. And it was a very good job. It didn't pay a lot. I think I started at maybe $55 a week. But it was a good job because it was consistent and it was easy to get to work. It was right near the subway line. So I liked it. And my father passed away while I was at Austin, and then I came and I went to Deluxe, and this job really.
What is Deluxe? That was the
name of
company?
the company. Yeah, Deluxe Theater. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, just for a minute, what's the relationship between dishes and theater for people who?
Oh, this was after the Depression. This is the Korean War, and in the early 50s, and during the Depression, in order to get people to come to the movies consistently, on Tuesday and Wednesday, they used to give out a dish to to every woman that came to the movie. Maybe sometimes they charged a nickel, but most of the time the dish was free. So, and if they continued, if they went for a whole year, they had they had a full set of dishes. And the women liked this. So every Tuesday and Wednesday they went. See, what it was is that in those days, they changed the movie twice a week. There was the weekend movies where they would have an A movie with a B movie. And then there was, during the middle of the week, they would have a C movie with a loser. And they would have a trailer, and they would have a cartoon. They would have all different things to get people to come in. And that's why they gave the free dishes to the women on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. So I worked for this company, and after a while, the men, they went across the street. I ended up taking over the jobs. I ended up running the business for many years. I ran the business for about 10, 12 years. I worked for them for 12 years. But I would say the first 2 years they did it, and after a while I took over because they became more successful, and they didn't have the time to do that. So I did it. I ended up with my own secretary. I ended up with an errand boy and a salesman, and I grew.
Talk up a little bit just because of the noise.
Okay. I grew in as much as I got older, because I started there when I was in my early 20s, and I worked there until I was 32 years old, and I became the boss. I was the boss. The bosses came in, they signed the mail and left. The only thing they did, really, is once a year they went down to West Virginia to pick out the patterns. And also, they were the salesmen. They also got the theaters to sign contracts. They did that, but I ran the actual shipping and billing and collection of money. I ran that. Somewhere along the line, I decided that I had enough of my mother taking over Jackie and I'm leaving me out of the picture. And I decided that I was going to get out of there. And my mother, she hated it. She fought me tooth and nail, but I decided that baby was going to be mine. And she wasn't a baby anymore, but she was 5 years old then. And she was going to start kindergarten. And I thought that this was a good time to try to break away. And so, with a great deal of fighting and a great deal of abuse from my mother, I found a one-bedroom apartment around the corner from where I worked. Can you imagine that? Right around the corner, I found an apartment, one bedroom, and I moved in. I took one of those fold-out beds from the house and a bookcase, and I moved into this apartment. I had nothing else except $300 in the bank. So once I got into this apartment, I had to pay these people. I paid them, I think, $400 from the previous renter to get this apartment. They went to the landlord and said, "Oh, my cousin's going to take the apartment. Is that all right?" So that's how I got the apartment, but I paid for it. And then I had the $300 in the bank. And I went to Macy's, and I bought a bed for $300. I bought a sofa bed for $300. I went to the bank, and I borrowed $300 on my $300. I didn't take my money out of the bank. I borrowed $300 on my $300. I paid for the bed, and that's how I started to furnish my house. And every time I finished paying up the $300, I went out and bought something else, went to the bank, and took out a loan and paid for whatever I bought. And then I had my furniture. We had no money. I remember one time, it was a Friday afternoon, and I got paid, and I paid off my rent. We bought some food. I paid the electric bill, and I turned to Jackie, and I said, Jackie, don't ask me for a cent. I only have a quarter in my pocket. And that's all I had for the week was the quarter. And of course, Jackie, being a good kid, she went along with it. Oh, there's a funny story I just thought of. Jackie, when we were living in this apartment, one time, Jackie got chicken pox. So in those days, when you got chicken pox, you took a talcum powder and you put it on you so that you shouldn't itch. So Jackie must have been about 7 years old at the time, and so I went into work a little late, you know, because I didn't want her to be alone too long, and I went into work, and I came back at lunchtime to see how she was doing. It was right around the corner, wasn't a problem. And there's Jackie sitting up on top of the top of the couch, the top part, and she's powdering herself, and the whole room is full of powder. The floors, the walls, the ceiling, and she's powdering herself. It was the funniest thing to see. Then I had a neighbor next door. She worked nights as a telephone operator, and he didn't work. He was going to be a producer on Broadway in the theater, and he had a lot of theatrical friends. And what used to have their apartment was the shadow of our apartment. Our apartment was a living room and a bedroom. Theirs was a living room and a bedroom, the opposite way. So our living rooms were together. And at 11 o'clock at night, their friends who were in this show, I've forgotten the name of the show, they were in the show. They used to drop in and come into their house, and they would talk with them.
Just hold on for 1 minute, because he's going to open the door and we won't be able to hear.
They're doing work outside, and the noise, we get the noise. Anyway, they used to have friends that would come in for an evening of coffee or wine, whatever they did, and they made quite a bit of noise. But I was in the living room, and I bought a sofa bed, so I was sleeping in the living room, and they would make, and every night I would go to sleep at 11 o'clock, and 11:10 in would march their friends, and they would have a party. And it was terrible. I couldn't sleep. I had problems. I spoke to them. I pleaded with them. I called the cops on them. I did everything. It didn't help. And I can be very vindictive if I have a chance. And I decided that I was going to get even with these people. That they had been my friends. We'd been in and out of each other's house. But when it came to respecting my hours, and they were breaking their lease because they had to be out. They weren't allowed to do that. But all right, I decided that I was going to buy a piano. And I had my $300, and I went to the bank, got a loan, and I went to the piano company, which was down in Manhattan, and I picked up a brand new piano. I had it delivered, and I had it put on the wall between our apartments. And then I looked up my lease, and my lease said no noise, you could make noise between 9 and 11. Now I had to get to work, but I had to be to work at 9:30, which was right around the corner. And my bosses never came in before 10. So I decided that I'm going to get my old piano books out, and I'm going to do piano exercises. So this couple, they had their friends in there till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Then they went to sleep in the living room. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're fast asleep. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, I would get up, open the piano, and this is what they heard next door. Till 9:25, and then I put on my coat and I went to work. Well, the walls would shake. The walls would shake. And I knew that I woke them up. And I knew that I woke them up every morning. And the wonderful part of it is that I went from these exercises to playing pieces in music. And after a while, I became as good as I used to be as a child. I was a good pianist as a child. And in the meantime, these people they're suffering. I didn't tell you this part. Upstairs, we both had a mutual friend, Danny Frazier.
What street was this on?
This was on West 45th Street.
So you were living in the city at this point?
Yeah, we were living in this one-bedroom apartment around the corner from where I worked. Danny Frazier and his wife lived on the 3rd floor, and they had a daughter, and Jackie was friends with this daughter. So I was friends with this couple. And Danny was an actor. He played in...
Wasn't he a famous actor?
Well...
I'm thinking about Danny Kaye, not Danny Frazier.
No. His name was Danny Frazier. He was a character actor. He played the police detective in a... Do you remember that guy? He had... He was a detective. He was bald.
Telly Savalas.
Yeah. He was...
Kojak.
He was
Telly Savalas.
He was Telly Savalas' boss in the police station. Danny worked there. He also worked on Broadway. He was also a drunk because he had 3 brothers and they all died by the age of 36, and he thought he was going to die when he was 36, but he managed to live through it. Danny, so we were friends with Danny because of Jackie and her friend. One night, Danny comes knocking at the door. He says, comes in, he says, blah, blah, blah. He never used to come down to me because I was friends with his wife. Women are friends, men, I wouldn't be friends with him. He comes in, he says, gee, wouldn't the piano be better on that wall? And you put the couch over here? I said, oh no, this is where it belongs. This is the right spot for it. Oh, he says, yeah, I think it would be much better. And I knew what he was doing. The other couple talked him into coming in to get me to move the piano. But I didn't move the piano. And we lived that way for a while. Oh, by the way, what I did was when I bought the piano, I moved into the bedroom with Jackie. See, Jackie was in the bedroom, I was in the living room. So now I went into the bedroom with Jackie, and they couldn't bother me anymore. But I bothered them for good couple of years.
Did they ever stop with the nighttime parties?
I don't know, because I went in the other room, and it never bothered me. But I got him. I got him good. I love that. That's the way Arthur would be.
Yes, that's the way Arthur would be.
That's something that Arthur would
But I did something similar in law school with my roommate.
You did?
I'll tell you that story another day.
Okay. So anyway, we lived on West 45th Street for 5 or 6 years, and economics became easier. I got a little raise here or there. I never really made a good living like I should have for what I was doing, but I didn't care. I had enough money. I saved money. I was able to buy stock. I was able to do different things, and then on West 45th Street, I lived at the beginning of the block. In the middle of the block, there was a playground. And in that playground, there were bad kids. And one of these kids killed somebody in the playground. We always had an umbrella. They called him the Umbrella Man. And he killed somebody. And I said to Jackie, I said, it's time for us to move. You know, she was old enough. She was like maybe 12. And I felt that I could leave her alone. So we
Which is interesting because Midtown Manhattan, would be 45th Street in Manhattan would be considered a very safe area today. Were you on the east side or the west side?
No, the west side, between 9th and 10th Avenue.
Oh, okay.
This was Hell's Kitchen.
It was Hell's Kitchen. It was right near Broadway, too. Yeah, it was right near the theaters.
Yeah, yeah. See, my office was between 8th and 9th, and I lived between 9th and 10th. It was very convenient. But I felt that it was time to move. I'd lived my 5-6 years someplace, and it was time to move. I'm still in that same pattern of moving. So we rented an apartment in Rego Park.
You lived in an extraordinarily large number of places.
Yes. But I enjoyed moving. I enjoy moving to this day, because when you move, you clean out your closets. You throw everything away you don't need. You find things you didn't know you had. And I enjoyed the excitement and the thrill of moving, because when you move, your life changes. And I enjoyed changing my life. I'm still that way to this day. We moved out of Long Beach. We could have stayed there. We moved out of Fenton Avenue. We could have stayed there. We would have dealt with the problems. But I enjoy moving. And
Daddy doesn't. He's more a creature of habit.
yes, that's true. But then but wherever I am, he's happy. So we moved to Weatherall Street in Rego Park, 6566 Weatherall Street. Had a big apartment.
Well, it would have been a big step up from the little apartments it sounds like you were in.
Oh yeah, this was a big apartment. It was 36 feet from the door to the window. It was a big apartment, and we really didn't have enough.
Furniture?
Furniture, yeah. What happened was, we were living there, and I was going out with a fellow from Philadelphia. And we decided to get married, and I was going to move to Philadelphia.
Where did you meet the guy from Philadelphia?
These boys, these fellas from Philadelphia, this is a crowd of Jewish boys from Philadelphia, used to make parties in New York so they could meet girls. And I was at one of these parties, and I met him.
What was his name?
Paul. Han. I don't know. It's not important.
It would seem you would remember it if you were going to get engaged.
Yeah. We didn't get engaged, but we were supposed to get married. and I was packing up. He wanted to move in with his mother. His mother was a widow, and she was alone in this house, 3-bedroom house. And I had been there the previous weekend, and the mother wanted, we were talking about where to put the furniture. The mother wanted to put the furniture in the piano in the basement. And I said, no, a piano doesn't belong in a damp basement. It belongs in the living room against this wall. She said, and she was nice about it, but she wasn't nice about it, you know. I got on the bus, and I was angry with him. Things were not nice. They were not. In the meantime, I came home. I packed up my apartment. I quit my job. My mother quit her job to come and take my job, which was a better job. And we were going, and I was going to move to Philadelphia over the weekend. And we were going to get married the following week. Friday afternoon, in he troops. He walks in. This where I worked was not an office, it was a store. It was a store. And he walks into the store.
This is at Deluxe?
Yeah, at Deluxe. This is my last day at work. I'm moving tomorrow. He walks in, and in other words, he says to me, I can't marry you, my mother won't let me. So, boom, goodbye, Charlie. I took my job back, but I was already packed. And I really didn't like living on Rico Park because it was a long walk to the subway, and I had no social life at all there. In the year and a couple of months that I lived there, I never once had a date. And
Grandma was still living in the Bronx at the time?
What?
Grandma was still living in the Bronx?
Yes, yeah. It was.
Did you have a car during this time? Did you have a car during this time?
Never had a car.
So when you went to visit her, or when you saw her, you took the subway up?
With subway, we used subways. So I was all packed. So I didn't like living in Queens. So I went up to the Bronx, and I found this apartment on Sheridan Avenue. The first apartment I looked at, I bought, I rented.
How old were you at this point?
I would say 30.
So, well, at some point along the way, you got a divorce?
That was while I was working at Austin.
Did you have any trouble with the divorce, or it was smooth?
No, I was going with a fellow who wanted to marry me. He paid for the divorce. Carl, his name was Carl. He paid for the divorce. I went to Florida and I got a divorce. And when I came back, we were supposed to get married.
Wait, what was in Florida that you...
That was the only way you could get a divorce. You couldn't get a divorce in New York at the time without adultery. And you had to break in and find him in bed with somebody. It was an entirely different life.
But did you have to move to Florida to do this?
You had to live in Florida for several months, 3 months, let's say. I don't know how many months. And I went down on Friday. I met this woman who had just flown down also. She was in the same hotel with me. And the lawyer came and said, you say that you've been here for the X amount of time, and this woman was there with you this amount of time, and we were told this is what we were to say. So we went in front of a stenographer who was drunk at the time, a stenotype. There was no judge or anything, And we took this deposition, and I said that I knew this woman and for 5 years, and that we came down together, and we've been living in this hotel, and we both said the same lie, and thank you very much, and we got our divorce, and we flew back the next day.
So you didn't need him to sign it or anything? Or he was okay signing?
Nothing. I paid for it. Well, I didn't pay for it. Carl paid for it.
So tell me about Carl.
Carl.
It's like you had a lot of guys wanting to marry you.
Yes. Yeah, I could name a lot of guys that really liked me. Carl was a salad caterer. He worked for he did all the salads and fruits on these, and he had made a very nice living. And he loved me. He loved me. I liked him. He was nice. He made a good living. He was very nice to Jackie. And I would have had a decent life with him. And not only that, but I used to work weekends. He used to get me jobs as a waitress on weekends. And I made more on the 2 jobs on the weekend than I made the whole week at Deluxe. So he wanted me to marry, he wanted to marry me, so he paid for the divorce. And on the way home in the plane, I remember saying to myself, I don't want to get married. And when I got home, I told him I didn't want to marry him. And he was pissed. He was really angry. But he didn't ask me for the money back. And I never gave it to him, because I never really had it. You know, I was a single mother with the child, and paying rent and doing, you know. So he came back a couple of times, but I couldn't.
Is it just that you didn't want to be married again? You were happy with your freedom?